Good afternoon, my friends. Today we're taking a look at UFC Abu Dhabi, and I have some pretty confident picks. They've been played on my Twitter already, but for this video, I want to give you a breakdown on the reasoning why I went with what I went with. If we go over to my Twitter, at JFT Videos, again, I'm going to give you the breakdown for today's video. So I started with play number one, Michael Chiesa, under 31.5 significant strikes. I was pretty shocked when I dug into the stats for Chiesa. I thought when you're fighting Tony Ferguson, you're guaranteed to get a high number. And then I ultimately went with the under after I read the statistics. So he averages 17.7 in his 18 UFC fights. And there are a lot of low numbers and decisions in there that he's not even hitting the number going all 3 rounds. So even if this goes all 3 rounds, there is a high potential that he stays under 31.5. He's only hit 31.5 significant strikes in 2 of his last 18 fights, making the under 31.5 an 88% occurrence. At minus 115, I could not deny this as a straight up play for 1.15 units. Second, we got Shamil Gaziev over a half a takedown and Bedoya Herbert to start round 2. And the Bedoya bet kind of plays into my fourth one where I have Bedoya over 59.5 significant strikes. So let me sell you on that after we go over Shamil Gaziev. But Gaziev regionally tended to be more of a grappler when it came to high-level fighters. You can take a look at my career highlight video I did on him. When he was fighting opponents that were tougher, not regional Russian bumps, he was shooting takedowns and landing them at a consistent margin. And then you go over to Dontel Mays. He's been taken down in 7 of 11 fights. He's been taken down on average 1.18 times per fight, which makes it me a little more confident at getting it at minus 165. However, I did not love the odds too much. So what I did was I took a look at the Bedoya Herbert to start round 2 at minus 600. That boosted my parlay to minus 115, which I'm confident about. That moving over to the Bedoya pick, Bedoya over 59.5 significant strikes. He's never been finished. He's going to struggle a little bit here with Herbert's reach, in my opinion. But the over 2.5 is favored nearly 2-1. The average significant strikes from Bedoya in his 2 UFC contests is 130. With the reach disadvantage, I think the number is going to be lower, but still 59.5 seems like a steal here for me. I actually cheated last event on the UFC pay-per-view. I went with Loughran under because they were overrating his number based on his significant strikes in only 1 UFC bout. But Bedoya is one of those guys that fights through punches. He fought 2 power punchers, was not finished, walked through their punches, and by the end of the fight was landing at a ridiculous clip. So I really do like over 59.5. And to be honest, I like the Herbert over 51.5 if this fight does get into the second round. Again, both guys getting over on their significant strike numbers, I highly favor as long as we don't see too many takedowns. And again, both guys, good takedown. Bedoya, good takedown defense, and I think that Herbert would be the guy to put the fight there. And then finally, Cedricus Dumas at plus money. You can get him to finish the fight. He's finished 3 of 5 UFC bouts, 6 of 11 regionally, which isn't crazy, but you're still getting a plus number. But then you jump over to Dennis Talulin. He has 7 finished losses. He's been finished in all 4 of his UFC losses and 5 of his last 5 losses, including a regional fight. And then the under 2.5 is favored heavily, and Dumas is favored over 2-1 to win the fight. The odds tell me Cedricus Dumas by finish is the most likely outcome, and again, you're getting it at plus money. So those are my plays for UFC Abu Dhabi. There are some great fights on the main card that I laid off with action, but I'm going to be super excited to watch. I dropped a video for Joel Alvarez El Fenomeno. Chito Vera Davison is going to be an amazing fight. Shara Bullet Magomedov again, who is a rising Russian prospect. And then you got the main event, title eliminator Corey Sandhagen, Umar Nurmagomedov. I'm going to be watching all the fights, and I'm very, very interested. But now I want to jump into what I recorded earlier in the week, breaking down a recap of my betting from the last month. So we'll get right into that part. Last time I did one of these videos, it was back in June. We get to go over some of the July results for the gambling. Again, all my picks, you'll never miss a pick. The picks are always taken from Twitter, but nonetheless, sometimes I do get them onto YouTube, like UFC 304, where we had a pretty decent night. We're just going to go over some of those results. We were on an absolute heater to start the recording of bets back in April. And we had a little bit of a fall off when I made that last video at the end of June, but in July, we had a pretty good month, and we're continuing to increase our unit profit year to date. We have really basically been entirely on DraftKings for this last recent run of fights. I love their significant strike numbers, and when they come out, they have basically the full card significant strike numbers on Thursday. Main card comes out even earlier. For pay-per-views, it comes out even earlier. It's remarkable, and I'm finding things that literally jump 7 to 10 significant strikes within a couple of days, and I'm just trying to be on the faster end of that. So you do want to keep it tuned into my Twitter so that right when I make the pick, you can follow it, you can fade, tail, whatever you want to do immediately, so that when the odds shift like they do really, really quickly with these significant strike markets, you can get on top of things. But nonetheless, the last one we did was UFC Louisville. at that time. We were a little bit okay, a little bit. We had a negative result in UFC Louisville. That was our first negative result in 5 events. So that kind of sucked. But then we moved on to July, and we actually started in July on a little bit of a cold streak. UFC Vegas 93 and UFC Saudi Arabia, they were both in the red for net results. I made the stupid decision of taking Ikram Aliskerov, who was knocked out by Robert Whittaker. Learned my lesson, and we threw a dart at the dartboard with a Ribeiro TKO in the first round, which also missed. And then we also lost Jeka Sergai, huge favorite. He was a part of one of my parlays. He got submitted in the first round, which I really did not see coming. I think Jeka does still have a very bright future in the UFC, but losing that fight kind of hurt. And again, we had Pilastri, who fought a very close fight as a plus 200 underdog to Josephine Knudsen. I was not mad when that result was read out and we ended up taking the loss. We win either of those through the Jeka Sergai or the Pilastri bet. We were in the green for that event. We only had 3 bets, so that was fine with me. The second one, again, the Ikram Aliskerov bet was a bad one. That was really my only bet for Saudi Arabia. And then we began to turn it around once again for July to try and bring it into the green overall. Going into UFC 303, we had Neiman Gracie on PFL 6 as a around plus 250 underdog. So that was a huge winner. And then we went into UFC 303, the major bets that I really love for Diego Lopez. That fight fell through and they replaced him with Dan Ige in that crazy turn of events just a couple hours before the event. But I lost out on all the significant strike bets that I had on the Ortega fight when they announced that. And I thought they were all locked. So that kind of hurt. But nonetheless, we still got Dolidze over 40.5, and we lost on Barriault 39.5, which ended up putting us up about 0.15 of a unit for that event. So we were still in the green on the pay-per-view, but just took a little bit of a loss. And then for UFC Denver, only had one unit play. It was on John Silva inside the distance. I took a featherweight moving up. He was on a hot streak. I went with the younger fighter over the veteran who was in the cage just recently, and he ended up stopping Dober via a cut. He had a couple potential spots in the earlier rounds too to finish the fight where I was really crossing my fingers like, put this guy away. But we did end up pulling through to get the 1.4 unit profit on UFC Denver. And then most recently, UFC 304. We had 5 plays. We hit the first 3, lost the last 2. I was trying to hedge the Curtis Blades play. So if I was to have taken Tom Aspinall first round, that probably would have been a perfect hedge in that spot. But I decided not to go with it. So we lost on the Curtis Blades. That was my biggest bet. If I didn't play that, if I just kept that bet aside, 5 plays, less than a unit, basically a play, I would have had 2.5 units of profit. So that would have been a great day. But instead, we get just under a unit at 0.85 units profit. But 2024 concluded bets. We have put 29.9 units on the table for a net profit of 5.78 units. That is a 19.33% return. You're not going to find that in the stock market anywhere near. And we just want to continue to have success on the betting lines, including this UFC Fight Night this weekend. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button, subscribe to Combat Sports Central. Again, tune into the Twitter for the picks. They come out immediately as I play them on Twitter, so make sure you keep it tuned in there. But that'll do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.